So let's bring in our friends Imo and Philip here. They're a couple of program managers on the .NET team, and they're going to be talking to us about porting projects to .NET 5. Imo, Philip, before we get started, I want to make sure you keep that question kind of in the back of your head. If you want to answer it up front, you want to save it for in your talk. But the question about how easy it is to upgrade to .NET 5, I think you might have a whole half hour on this.
I was about to say, like the one line answer is it's very possible, right? So that otherwise you wouldn't have the talk. I mean, of course, there's always gotchas in how you actually approach this, right? Like if you have a larger application, but .NET Core and now .NET 5 is not a small platform anymore. It has tons and tons of features. So of course, you can port your stuff to .NET 5 and be very happy, right?
Terrific. All right, friends, the stage is yours.
Yeah, let me just quickly introduce myself. My name is Imo Landworth. I'm a program manager on the .NET Platform team, and with me today is Philip. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Philip Carter. I'm also a program manager on the .NET Platform team, focusing more on languages and language tooling. But I'm here today to chat to you with my good friend Imo about the fun that is porting to .NET 5.
Sounds great. So can I get the slides up? I don't know whether they're up or not, but I assume they will be up in a second. So
we can pretend like they're up.
So let me just do a quick recap. I mean, probably most of you have seen this slide now, but like I still want to show this amazing animation skills that we have on the .NET team. Because normally when we build slide decks, they're not very pretty. So basically, the vision that we have for .NET 5, and then of course continuation in .NET 6, is that we give you a unified platform that can do any modern workload, right? Whether it's native UI, web UI, or whatever the Azure services, whatever you need to build, you can build with .NET. But very much the question that people ask me then is like, what does it mean technologically, right? You have this animation, everything flows together. And so just to recap, .NET Framework is our existing offering around for 20 plus years now. We announced that we will only do bug fixes and security fixes. We will no longer do any feature work. So it basically doesn't go anywhere. And if we would have just ref .NET Core 3.1, it would have been called .NET Core 4.0, right? And then we said we also want to migrate or merge Mono and Xamarin with the .NET Core offering. And so once we looked at this picture, we said maybe we should just change the name to just .NET, given the .NET Framework isn't going anywhere, to make it simpler for everybody, right? Just have one name and a version number rather than some sort of different SKUs of your...
Hey, Imo?
Yeah?
The screen you're sharing doesn't have your slides on it.
What is happening? Fascinating.
I guess this is how everybody can know that this is live.
We're live. We're fixing things as we go here.
So I thought I shared the entire screen, no?
Yeah, and we see the video production. We don't see your slides. There we go.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Now I clicked the wrong button.
Now it's gone again.
Thanks so much.
Okay. Let's try this again. Here we go.
There it is.
Perfect.
Right there.
So now you have the visual to the thing that I was talking about earlier. But basically, the story that we have is we said like, okay, let's merge all the offerings we have in one unified platform that we call .NET, right? And then we said, okay, given that .NET Framework is at 4x, let's just skip the version number 4 for .NET Core, just call it .NET 5, right? That's really the idea. And then the only thing that has changed in our picture is that we said, well, okay, we can't actually do the Xamarin migration in this release due to COVID and other things, so that's postponed to .NET 6. But the vision is still the same. That's why the earlier slide said .NET 5 to .NET 6 wave, right? So that's basically what is happening under the covers. So one thing that is very important to consider when you talk about porting is being aware of what's not coming to Core, right? So the animation earlier implied that we shove all of .NET Framework into .NET Core. That's not what we have done. So in the early days, .NET Core was relatively small. It started as a very small framework. And then the .NET Core 2 timeframe, we added a bunch of technology from .NET Framework to .NET Core. We also added the Windows Compatibility Pack, which adds a ton more APIs to it. But at this point, we are done with bringing forward technology from .NET Framework. So there's no more stuff coming that is existing in .NET Framework, but not in Core. So specifically, the things that we said we don't want to bring is app domains and remoting because they're very expensive runtime features and not really suitable for modern application development. They have been replaced by corresponding features. Of course, when we replace features, they very rarely have full fidelity, right? Because otherwise you wouldn't get any savings from not having those features in the first place. So app domains is basically replaced by assembly load context. That allows you to have isolated parts where you can load different versions of the same assembly. Remoting as an IPC communication mechanism has been replaced with named pipes. For more cross-machine things, probably gRPC is a more appropriate replacement. Web forms, I mean, the earlier talk basically talked about Blazor extensively, right? Web forms is not really a suitable paradigm for the modern web anymore due to various technology reasons, but ASP.NET Blazor is an amazing platform to build stuff. And then WCF, we have WCF client. We don't have all the client stuff. There's more stuff that we will blog about soon that we bring forward. But by and large, the WCF that we have on core is the one we have. So it doesn't include, for example, WSDL serving on the server. And the replacement for that is there's an open source port of the entirety of WCF. It's called Core WCF. And same with Workflow Foundation. We are not bringing it, but there's a company here in Bellevue, actually, that invests in Workflow Foundation. And they have a community version of our source code. So we basically gave, basically, it has all the features that you may want to, but we basically give them the source code to actually do it. So one thing that we need to talk about, it's kind of the elephant in the room when we talk about .NET 5 is that, we, or I should say I, because I was the one PMing it. So I basically proposed that we simplify the framework names. So we have a lot of framework names today with various just, funny names like NetCore App and NetStandard. And so with .NET 5, we simplified this. So we have a framework name called Net 5 now that represents the portable subset. That's basically the thing that's at the bottom. And then on top of that, we have these operating system specific framework names like, Net 5.0-Windows, for example. And then in the future, we have Net 6.0-Android and Net 6.0-iOS as well that will include the operating system specific APIs on top of that. And so as such, Net 5.0 basically replaces NetCore App and NetStandard. And so that's basically where all the portable code lives, meaning this is all the code that you want to share between all your devices. And then on top of that, you have the operating system specific parts where you basically build the UI, right, or other things. So for example, WinForms and WPF are only available when you target Net 5.0-Windows. If you only target Net 5.0, you get access to the cross-platform API, but not the device-specific APIs. So what does it mean for us? So like the things that we ship, like everything that we build that's cross-platform, ASP.NET, for example, or EF, pretty much all of our system packages that are NuGet, they continue to target the portable version, Net 5, right? That's the code that runs everywhere. And then everything that's OS specific will be in OS specific branches. So for example, Windows controls would be Net 5.0-Windows, for example. Cross-platform abstractions, meaning these are packages that give you a portable API surface, let's say GPS, which Xamarin Essentials provides, for example. And then it has operating system specific implementations to actually do the work. And so what they would target is they would target Net 5, and then the package itself would contain particular binaries for the other hives. So there would be one for Net 5-Windows to talk to the Windows GPS sensors, for example, and a Net 5-iOS, not Net 5, of course, Net 6-iOS, they would call the iOS APIs. Right? So that's how the rough targeting looks like. And I have a blog post that goes into a lot more detail on this that you can find. So the question then is, what should you do? So if you talk about your own application code, basically you should continue to use NetStandard if you want to share code between .NET Framework and any other platforms, right? As we said, .NET Framework is not going anywhere. And so as such, NetStandard was the last version that .NET Framework can reference. If you want to use more of the modern code between, let's say, just Xamarin and .NET Core, then NetStandard 2.1 might be an option for you. And then moving forward, it's just Net 5, right? And then Net 6, Net 7, and so on, right? So when we talk about porting, basically, the question is, how should you approach this? So in general, like you need to understand why you want to port in. And if you need to port at all, right? As I said, .NET Framework isn't going anywhere. Like we will support it for as long as Windows is supported. So there's no reason to like overly aggressive port everything you've ever built on .NET Framework, because if you just maintain those projects, they can safely reside on .NET Framework and the world is good. But if you want to innovate, if you want to take advantage of new language features or new technologies, then you may want to consider porting. Now, when you're doing this, you should make note of what you actually want to port to. So for example, .NET Core 3.1 is LTS, meaning it's a long-term support release, versus .NET 5 is a current release, and then .NET 6 will be an LTS release again. So depending on what your requirements are, you may want to decide between .NET Core 3.1 or .NET 5. Also, the operating system is important, right? Do you stay on Windows or do you plan to move to, let's say, Linux in a Docker environment? That will also influence how you approach things. The general approach to porting is make sure you have click stops along the way, right? Because very few people have the ability to just suspend business entirely, take half a year off and port your applications entirely. So you want to make sure that you have always click stops along the way where you can still ship working software, right? So don't try to make the big port all in one, swoop. We have a demo later where Philip does exactly that, and that's cool for small projects. But as your solution gets bigger, that might stop working for you. So the first step you should do is understand your own application, right? And that means you may have a gut feel of what your application is actually doing, but it's probably wrong, right? Because your application is large. Many people have worked on that. So do yourself a favor, use API Port. That's a tool that Philip will also demo that allows you to create an inventory of your application, meaning what are all the dependencies, what APIs is it using, what APIs are not available. And so that gives you a high-level overview of your application, how easy it is to port parts of it. You should also look out for legacy. Almost all projects have some part in it that might be expensive to port, but you may not want to port the component at all because you consider it a legacy system. So make sure you understand where your legacy parts are, and maybe considering removing them first from your application before you even port, because then you have less stuff to port. And then lastly, understand your dependencies, right? Do you depend on NuGet packages or third-party libraries, and make sure they also offer support for .NET Core or .NET 5, right? That makes your life also easier. If they don't, again, consider moving to more modern versions of those components first, and then do the port after. So once you're in the middle of the port, the first thing you should do is convert your project. That starts with packages.config. So packages.config is the old way to reference NuGet packages. You should migrate everything to package reference, which you can do and stay on the old project file format if you want. You can just right-click the packages.config file and migrate them by themselves. Or you can use try-convert that does everything, that does the packages.config stuff and also does the SDK-style projects. One thing you can consider is only migrating the project files, but still targeting .NET Framework. Not every feature that we have on .NET Framework is supported by the modern project files, but again, it's another click stop where you can just do half the migration, still have working code that builds, and move from there. And then finally, moving to .NET 5 or .NET Core is just you replace the target framework string in the project file from, let's say, .NET 4.8 to .NET 5 or .NET Core App 3.1. And so, but what you should target too, it also depends on what you have. So for example, if you look at your solution with 60 projects, chances are you want to start somewhere, and usually you want to start at the very bottom. You want to start at your reusable libraries, want to move them first to .NET Standard, so that when you have projects on top that use .NET Framework, they can still reference them. And then again, later on, you move them to .NET Core if you want. So again, the whole mission here is phases, right? Don't do everything in one go. And then lastly, like when you want to move to other operating systems, make sure you use a CI environment that can actually run your code on multiple operating systems, because while we have tried really, really hard to give you a portable API surface, we still don't want to abstract entirely away the operating system, right? And there will be different behaviors based on whether you run on Windows or Linux. So if you compute your paths by hand, by concatenating backslashes, that works fine on Windows, but it doesn't work so well on Linux, right? So your code might have bugs because it doesn't do the proper thing. And the way you find out is by running your code, right? Just compiling it isn't enough. And so one very easy way of doing it is what we do for our own products is you just have a CI run that has multiple legs, meaning it builds and runs your tests on multiple operating systems. And so you have one CI run, but it spawns 3 builds on 3 different operating systems. Or in our case, more like 20 or something like that, right? All right, so that's enough talk. Now let's see some demo.
Yeah, so I'm here to show a few of the things that Immo had mentioned. Let me go ahead and try to share my screen here. All right, y'all should see Visual Studio in all its glory. We'll take a look here. I have a solution that has a class library, a console app, a unit test project, a WinForms app, and a WPF app. The class library is referenced by everything else. It is under test using Test Explorer. I think I need to build the solution first. But what's important is this is all .NET Framework old style projects, or long form projects, or whatever you want to call it, basically. If you try, you need to unload the project file. Sorry, you need to unload the project to be able to edit the project file, like all that sort of stuff there. Why did I have it set up like this? Well, every single one of these project types, WPF, WinForms, MS Test, Unit Test, Console App, and Class Library, is supported by the try-convert tool that can convert a project file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through installing 2 tools that Immo had mentioned and run those tools and show you what a basic porting process can look like. So the first thing you're going to need is you're going to need the .NET CLI installed. It comes installed with Visual Studio if you already have that on your machine. And then you're going to want to run .NET tool list -g, where -g stands for global. You'll see that I have a tool installed already, but I'm going to want to install 2 additional tools. I'm going to go .NET tool install -g API port. This is going to install the portability analyzer that Immo mentioned, and I will install TryConvert, which is a project conversion tool. Then I will run .NET tool list -g again. You can see that it is running. It now has API port, and it now has TryConvert installed on my machine. So if I go API port, you can also run as API port.exe -h. Looks like there's a few options there. I can run API port analyze. Let's see what that tells me. Okay, there's quite a lot there, but I know what I'm looking for is the option called F, where F is the path to an assembly file or directory of assemblies. So I will run API port analyze -f dot, where dot is the current directory. So this is inside of the solution that I have open in Visual Studio. So this is going to analyze the assemblies, and it's going to write out an API analysis report as an Excel file. So I can go ahead and open that up in Excel, and we can see there's a nicely formatted table here. Where it's split out by each assembly that it analyzed, and then it told me kind of roughly what how compatible it is with .NET Core. So it looks like in my class library where I'm using some ADO.NET APIs, Console App, WinForms, and WPF, it's fine. The unit test project is showing that there may be something to look at. I can click the details tab down below in Excel, and this gives me a list of all of the types there, and I can see right here it says that this test tool, that unit testing is not supported. I know that that is actually supported, so there's a little bit of cleanup to do in this tool here, but what's more important is that I can take a look at this. I can assess how things are going. I can see roughly how supported I am, and then I can choose to continue or not continue based off of the information I have. So like, for example, it may show that an API is not supported, but it may just be that I just make a simple, quick change in my source code, and then I am compatible. And personally, I'm much more comfortable if I'm only worried about my source code, right? Like if I go back into Visual Studio, if I'm right here editing my C# code, I can fix those problems, no issue. Now, what I struggle with a little bit more is when project files are not in the place that I would like them, or the layout of packages and config files, and making sure that I'm doing that stuff correct. Like I want to focus mostly on editing my source code, fixing API issues there, adding new packages, like that kind of stuff. And so there's a question of how do I get there? Because right now, if I don't have a tool, I'm going to need to create a brand new project, copy over source code files, and do that for every single project in the solution. And although that's only 5 projects right now, you can imagine if it's 500 projects in the solution, that's quite a lot of work. So that's what the TryConvert tool is for. So if I run TryConvert -h, there's some options there. What I'm looking at here is the -w or workspace, and this is the solution or project file to operate on. If a project is not specified, the command will search the current directory for one. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll go try-convert -w dot, where again, dot stands for the current directory. So it's running. It should be crawling the solution and analyzing the project files and changing them. So it looks like it said conversion was complete. I'm going to reload. Visual Studio prompted to reload everything here. Let's see. It looks like it made plenty of changes. Design time builds have finished. And I can open up the project file, and ta-da, I can double click to open these project files. These all look like the nice clean project files that we have in .NET Core. I can actually build this solution. You'll notice that it has changed the target framework. It's changed the output type. It's cleaned up this project file, but also made sure that the correct things are in there. So for example, use WPF is set to true for the WPF app. For the WinForms app, it's use Windows Forms. I can run this WPF app. Looks like it runs on .NET Core. I can build. Looks like I can even run this unit test. And so that thing that I was worried about, the test project, actually, oh, sorry, that's the backup file that it generates. Actually, it turns out it was okay. these APIs are actually compatible. They run. I can run unit tests, and that is actually by design. The tool will convert an old style MS test project into a new style MS test project. It will make all the necessary project file transformations in your desktop applications, your console apps, and your library apps. And so, you'll notice there's like these package references to like Microsoft.C#, system.dataset extensions. I can actually technically remove these, and it's not a problem. I can rebuild and it's fine. And so, but really sort of the goal here isn't necessarily to make everything perfect, but it's to get it to a point where everything loads and builds in Visual Studio so that you can sort of clean things up and make adjustments to your code sort of as you see fit, right? Like, having these extraneous package references might bother you. So you could go through one by one, see if they need to get deleted or not. But the point is it converted everything over to the point where you can actually make those decisions rather than having to start entirely from scratch. And so that's basically what I got for the demo here. I think the other thing that's worth noting is, although these are all simple project files, it's actually a lot of complex stuff that even the most basic of these project files handle. So TryConvert can handle significantly larger projects and significantly larger solutions. The main thing that you're going to find with those, though, is your project files will convert, but you're more likely to run into API incompatibilities with larger solutions. And that is by design, right? We're not trying to fix up all of your C# code, because in many cases, we can't. We just want to get it to the point where you can load stuff, you can open up your code files, and you can edit your code and fix problems from there, so that the process of porting is a lot easier. So yeah, I think we could probably go back to some slides here.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks. Like, you just mentioned the limitations, right? So anything to say about ASP.NET or Xamarin Project?
Yeah, so currently TryConvert does not support converting Xamarin projects and does not support converting ASP.NET old style MVC or web forms projects. It also does not migrate any source code. Some of this may change. We're already taking a look at how to migrate ASP.NET projects. One of the reasons why it doesn't do that, especially with ASP.NET, is there are so many API differences from moving from, I guess it kind of depends, but there's a lot of very fundamental differences between ASP.NET and ASP.NET Core, whereas that's not true for desktop apps. And desktop apps, they're pretty much the same, and so that's why it supports them. With ASP.NET, we're looking at doing things like running some analyzers after it's converted, and seeing what all we could potentially change, if not. But yeah, by and large, the goal is that it does not migrate your source code. It just migrates your project files and automates that kind of tedious process that you would otherwise have to do manually, so that you can focus on your source code and so that you can focus on fixing problems from there. So,
yeah, that's right. We also have docs. When you go to AKMS net porting docs, they cover all the tools we just showed you. It also covers a lot of the process on how to get there and how to think about the modern world, so to speak. API port, very simple to install, as Philip was showing, just .NET tool install JSG API port. That's the tool that gives you the Excel spreadsheet. TryConvert is the thing that does the project level conversion. Also just .NET tool install JSG TryConvert to get you running.
Oh, and one thing that I would also mention with the TryConvert tool that we didn't demo, it actually does convert your packages.config as well. Right. So it will move everything over to package references by default. So you're already sort of in that modern world.
Yeah, and I should mention, I talked a lot about the process. Like, I have done the TryConvert all-in-one migration on smaller projects very successfully. So it might be just worth a try. And then if that one, results in lots and lots of build breaks, maybe you should start doing the more piecemeal migration that I showed earlier. The other thing to keep in mind is that, I think Philip might have mentioned this, but make sure you use source control, right? The tool does backups, but it works a lot better when it's version control, because you can actually see what the diffs are, and it helps you.
Yes. Source control, definitely a good choice. As Emma said, it will generate a .old file, so it will write a backup of the old project file. But yeah, be under source control.
Right. So then we also have one slide about all the stuff that's new in Visual Studio. And if there's nothing more, then I think we're up for questions.
Oh my gosh. Okay. TryConvert, getting my projects set for .NET 5. Gosh, team, I feel like there's a lot to unpack there. And the folks in chat actually have a bunch of questions over from Twitter. They're asking questions using the hashtag .NETConf. Let me go to a couple of these over here and there's actually a couple of pretty good comments for us. If we can put the tag board up, let's take a look here. Question here from Johan. What's the difference between the Try Convert and Community Build Migrate 2019 tool?
Yeah, I can answer that one. So the Community Build Migrate 2019 tool, I believe, just does sort of XML transformations on the project files. Try Convert actually loads the projects themselves into an MS Build workspace, and it then uses MS Build APIs to move stuff over. In general, Try Convert is a bit more conservative. Because it's sort of the philosophy of it is that at all points, MS Build is able to load and build your project, at least from the perspective of the project file. Now, your code may fail to compile, but at least MS Build can build the project that it spits out. And that's sort of, there's some weird edge cases that kind of tends to involve. And so that's sort of, I think, the primary difference, at least from a technical level.
Okay, well, and speaking of edge cases, Dennis mentions here, look at this. I have an enterprise level application with 130 Visual Studio projects in it, which is being actively developed. It's based in WCF, and I think that's supposed to be Windows workflow. Do I have the worst case for porting to .NET 5, or does someone have a worse one? Dennis, that's
a good question. I'd say Silverlight might be worse, but yeah, I mean, it's certainly not easy, right? If you took a heavy bet on Workflow Foundation, then at that point you may want to, reconsider like what would porting give you, right? So so you can check out the core WF community portals that I mentioned earlier that does have a port of the Workflow Foundation stuff. Same with WCF. So like there are replacements for you, but they will likely require also rework on your side, right? So we probably have to change some namespaces and some package names, similar to what Philip mentioned about the unit testing project. But like it should be possible. In general, like when you think of, as I said earlier, like you should really think about what are your business goals, right? Why are you porting in the first place, right? If you want to go somewhere else, if you want to move to Linux, you want to move to microservice architecture, and you want to use Docker and other stuff, then I doubt that WCF and WF will make you very happy there anyways, right? Even if we had the technologies available. So the question really then becomes like, what is it that you plan on doing?
Yeah. Let me ask one more question here before I let you go. And this is a question from Lumi. Lumi asks, when does .NET Framework 4.8 support end? I know this is a question we get a lot.
I think it's when Windows support ends, which it's a long way coming, right? So I don't think that, as we said earlier, there's no reason to panic, right? .NET Framework is not the new XP, right? So it's not like you need to get off of this because we turn off the lights. Like you will get fixes forever.
It's part of Windows. As long as there's a version of Windows, you're going to get support for .NET Framework 4.8.
That's right.
Well, thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate you showing us how to migrate to .NET 5 and the various tools that are available. Really appreciate you joining us for .NET Conf.
Thanks. It's awesome. I really like the talk so far, and it's very polished. It all looks great.
Very cool.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'll see some folks later for the F# talk.
Oh, yeah.